Hi, everyone. I'm here with my longtime friend and colleague, Chris Pace, VP of Digital Experience Strategy at SearchStax, to talk about all things healthcare marketing and search. You've got questions, we've got answers. Let's roll into it. Welcome, Chris. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So tell us, Chris, what are you most excited about in healthcare marketing right now?
Well, it's interesting right now because it feels like, we have this mad rush of AI adoption, which I think is like, there's still some hesitancy that's kind of like the counterbalance of the desire of the C-suite to do something with AI. And meanwhile, we're almost getting back to basics in some ways. Reframing the problem, trying to address the challenges of access. Demand isn't an issue. So anyone that talks about doing like demand generation, you don't need to do that. You need to focus on brand, differentiation, storytelling, and connection. And if you can get those four things right, then you know, AI is just a hyperscaler of all that, but you have to get the four tenets right before you can leverage a tool like AI to kind of maximize the opportunity.
Yeah, so I don't really believe that anybody has all four of those things right. Do you?
No, no, no. These are aspirational goals, Ahava. We're not talking about like practical takeaways. We have to focus on these four basic principles.
I mean, it's really funny that you say that because particularly in healthcare, I'm not really sure why people ever called it demand gen. Like, that's
I know.
not really.
I mean, the demand exists whether you exist or not, right? I mean, people get sick, people need well care, and you just need to make it easy for them to access it at an
Yeah,
affordable price or that's aligned with their
yeah,
insurance and do it better than average. I mean, it's
right,
like pretty low table stakes.
right. It actually should be called interest gen, I guess, or something, or awareness
Yeah, yeah,
gen, something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Relevance, Jen.
Relevance gen. There you go. I love that. Okay, so SearchStax just did this really cool research, like really cool.
Yes,
And
yes.
when you told me about it, I was like, we got to share that with my audience. So, what to you were like three things that really stood out that you feel like as a healthcare marketer today, if you don't know this, you're not doing your job well, or you're not in possession of the facts that will help you make really good strategic decisions.
Yeah, so I think, the key is we start with the baseline. Trust is down in healthcare. And, it's kind of like the reasons why those four things we just talked about are so important. Since COVID, consumers are inundated with misinformation and disinformation. There's internet influencers that are helping diagnose things that, people think they don't need doctors anymore for. And meanwhile, healthcare is expensive and the outcomes aren't where they should be given the price. So, given the fact that trust is down, our hypothesis going into this was, well, you know, maybe digital can play a role because if we can earn back some credibility, leverage the insights that we have as a provider of healthcare services and then get that in front of people in an easy digestible way, then all of a sudden maybe we can make some improvements on trust. And that like the key stat that came through this survey, and by the way, just for context, we surveyed 1,000 consumers. We did not ask the marketers because the marketers are going to market, they're going to tell us what we already know, but we wanted to know from the mouths of babes, so to speak, like what are the people saying about what we do and how we can make change. And then we also did some qualitative research to sort of back it up with examples. And key point number one was that 80% of patients would feel more confident in their provider if they made digital experience improvements. And that's a huge opportunity, right? Because, you know, the patient doctor experience is usually really good, but it's the crap that people have to go through to become a patient is hard. And I think that being able to make digital a little bit easier, content easier to find and easier to understand, and then appointment booking much more consumer facing and less, decision tree making, I think is like kind of the opportunity.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I always wonder when people talk about digital experiences what they truly mean. And I think part of what is so frustrating to people is not really making the appointment, it's getting the assurance approval after the appointment is made. That is, or while they're making the appointment, that is so frustrating to them. The other thing I think about digital experiences when people talk about them, and I have no data to back this up. This is just based on like what I hear, what I see, what I read, and what I experience in my own life is how to actually get in touch with your doctor once you've met with them. Like that
Right.
to me is where like these portals have like completely changed my feeling about these doctors. It's just like they get back to you in 48 hours usually. And like to me, that's like, wow, I didn't have to wait for a phone call. They wrote to me or they said, I need to talk to you about this. Or even better, my PA is going to call you. And I've talked to the PA, my physician assistant, or my nurse practitioner. So I always wonder, like, when they say digital experience, what they really mean. I think your point about actually understanding what's going to happen is a huge piece that I think so many healthcare providers skip right over. Like, what's going to happen to me when I go in for this appointment? Who's going to talk to me first? Like, what's the waiting room going to look like? What's the exam room going to look like? Not for people who need a strep throat culture, but for people who are like looking at a really serious diagnosis. There's so much fear we could alleviate for them with good content that we don't do, and just like you said, like, just good digital experiences, like, if I press a button, does it take me to where it said it was gonna take me? So,
Yeah.
with you.
And to the point of like what is the digital experience? There's I think, inside the walls of healthcare, we treat digital experience based on kind of like how the org chart is structured. So, access team has a digital experience, billing has a digital experience, the care side has a digital
Right,
experience. And then meanwhile,
exactly.
marketing's like trying to, spider web all this stuff together into something that makes sense. And what consumers tell us is that it's just from start to finish, it's a digital experience. It's the Google search that starts the journey. Like what is it? 85% of consumers of healthcare start at Google.com. And ChatGPT and other LLMs are scraping a little bit of that share away, but it's still the front door.
It's yeah, oh, 100%.
And what that also told us is that search is the way people investigate things. People look for answers to questions. People try to find out why they have this or where they can go. And they're not just using like a single term of like a condition or a diagnosis. They're painting a big picture of intent. And I think that's a big gap that we are not addressing as marketers in healthcare currently.
So what would you do about that, though? Like, okay, so you're making a good point. It's valid, it's true. What would you tell a healthcare marketer now? Okay, what are you gonna do about it?
Well, I think, what the challenge is today is that we built digital front door, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, like in
You
the
were
COVID
lucky.
era. If you were
You did
lucky and
it.
had the resources and actually did something, but we built it for a different time already. Like it's already expired. And, what I'm seeing and hearing from my colleagues inside of health systems is that there's this what I call funnel compression effect happening. Awareness and consideration are being taken away from your website and your other digital channels and pulled.
Awareness. I don't think I wanna talk about this. This is so exciting for me. Keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah.
Funnel
So
compression.
yes, so all of that is shifting away, and we're seeing that manifested in less visits to the website, less clicks. But
Right.
what we are also seeing is higher intent users that are
Exactly,
actually
exactly,
converting, right?
exactly.
So the design of your website has fundamentally changed from when it was just pull people in and get them to do something.
And your content has to change also to follow. But wait, I wanna ask you a question. So you said
Yeah,
awareness and consideration.
yeah,
Here's my thing. I think awareness happens at the results page.
hmm,
Consideration is still happening. They're still clicking on the websites to see the difference between the 2. If they're really evolved consumers, they're going into LLMs and doing that research there. And one
yeah,
of the things that I've been talking about on the big redesign projects that we're on is stop thinking about design so much. They're not
right,
be clicking around your website as much. Will they go to make sure that you really have a website? Yes. Are they going to expect to do certain kinds of business with you on your website? Yes. Are they going to expect certain kinds of education? Yes. But with all this fancy photography and these dynamic includes and all, it's not that's not what's gonna happen anymore. It's just it's gonna
Exactly.
yeah. And to your point, nobody wants to build for a future they can't see. It's too scary.
Right. Yes, I'll respond to the consideration bit, and what I meant by it, because I think you hit something directly, which is where my head is. So the evolved consumer, you clarified for me, and that consideration is happening in ChatGPT and other LLMs, where it's like, who's better, X health system or Y health system? And what used to be like relying on Nextdoor or Facebook, that stuff's still happening. But now we have a new channel where you're letting this answers engine give you a
Right?
recommendation I mean, like with literally zero credibility. I mean, we're trusting these tools to give us the right answer.
You makes
And
me laugh. Do you remember in the old days when people would like keyword stuff on like a gray page? They would put
oh
gray
yeah,
and they would put okay. Do you know what they're doing now? They're putting in like best practice in New York City on their
yeah,
websites. And so when you ask the LLM who's the best practice in New York City for podiatry, it's like this is them. These guys are like four guys like in a corner shop. You know what I mean? And they're the best podiatrists in New York City. It's crazy what's going on. It's like
yeah.
a Wild West. And that's why PR has had a resurgence, right? Because that really is the party
Absolutely.
stuff. Like,
What's old is
that
new again.
brand.
Right. Exactly.
Like, so I haven't said they're important for years. I think writing great content, great brand differentiated content. Let's be clear about something. If you're using AI, writing duplicate content. You wouldn't have done that a year ago. You're certainly not going to start now. So you're not going to
Yeah.
write content with AI. You can use AI for 1,000 other things. What I so it's still important to have that educational information there. I think it needs to be done differently now. It can't be we perform knee replacement surgeries. It's we perform 1,000 of them a year.
Yeah.
Our doctors were voted best. Our patient satisfaction scores are X. Those are going to be as the LLMs get more sophisticated, they're going to
Yes.
put all that information in. What's another big piece of research that you found that like totally blew your mind? Because that 80% digital experience thing is like trust. Take that to the bank.
Yeah. So there's two stats here, and I think these have operational impact and market share erosion impact. So the first is 71% of patients abandon your website completely and turn to outside sources after frustrating search experiences. So the example there is, I'm trying to find, the right doctor for the right condition that I have that based on what I know about my health. And if your like search bar doesn't connect to your find a doctor, it only connects to content, you're probably not going to find what you need in that
Right.
moment.
That's right. Your entire
And
ecosystem needs to be
so
working on
where are you going to
that.
go? You're going to go right back where you came from,
Yeah.
Google, ChatGPT, etc.
Or the
And so
competitor down the block.
yeah, and if your own site doesn't have that content discoverable inside of it, it absolutely is not discoverable outside of it. So this is where like search as a practice rather than a channel is super important, because you need to be thinking about the layers of intent that exist outside your website, inside your website, and share that information. I've kind of framed this as what I call the triad of search. Paid search has always had like a real focus, but it's like temporary attention that you rent in an auction, basically. The second bit is the content that's discoverable by SEO, AEO, GEO. I call that earned search. And that's, again, very important, different use case, different insights, but still, the same customers kind of navigating all of this.
Ah,
And then the third piece that is almost off 9 times out of 10 overlooked by health systems, because again, to my point earlier, these digital experiences are built based on who owns what in the org chart rather than how consumers navigate through your digital ecosystem, and that's your owned search. And owned search has the highest intent of any search that you can invest in, because you've already got the customer there. They're ready to buy with you.
why have
And
I been doing this for 25 years and I've never heard anyone explain it like that before?
I don't know. I mean, I just thought of this like this past year, and it's, again, we're all organized based on the silos of work. And I think that the
Right.
marketers of the future are going to need to think of, I mean, it's customer focused marketing, which, is kind of an old
How long have we been
crap.
is it really owned search or is it owned findability?
Could be that. Yeah. I mean, I think own discoverability.
Owned
Yeah.
discoverability maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, to the point of, search is how winners were defined on the internet 25 years ago. I mean, when Google finally, emerged out of, Stanford's like, engineering department and became a thing that was the front page of the internet, um, the winners in digital, were the ones that could be found in Google. And the
And that's
and the
right,
lose
and the losers who used to be the winners took their eye off the search key.
absolutely.
Yeah, but let me
And
ask you another question. What do people do to make sure that their own search is as tight as it can be?
yeah, so rather than focusing on the search that comes with the platform you invest in, Find a Doctor has one, classes and events have one, your DXP, your content management system have one. You need something that connects all the dots and is sort of a headless discovery engine.
Yeah.
And then once you have the technology, you have to build a practice around it so that the people that are managing the relevancy and the optimizations in
My God, can
that
you make that a
space.
bumper sticker? Once you have a technology, you have to build a practice around it.
Right, right, right. Yeah, the tech can't solve it on its own,
Oh, it
but
can? Yes, it can. Yes, it can.
right. But once you have that insights layer and you start to weave it together with, the learnings you have outside of your site, the learnings you have from paid search, you can and another hidden gem inside of healthcare is the call center. They are fielding, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of calls a day, a year, a month. And that unstructured data, if you can convert that into scripts that you can then start to synthesize themes from, you could build content that solves the phone call problem. And that was the third data point that came through, which was 65% of patients who fail to schedule an appointment online call the provider instead. And what we know about phone calls in healthcare is they are expensive to service. $15 to $25 per phone call on average.
The other people that don't make the phone call, then they've abandoned you
Well,
completely.
yeah, I think it was like 10 to 15% just give up completely. They just don't seek care. And that's startling. And so, that's where like, self-diagnosis online probably comes into play, or maybe like a telehealth provider or something like that. But I mean, you're 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 giving up revenue by not being able to answer questions online and putting people in a call center tree that young people don't want to be in. Gen Z and young millennials absolutely do not want to pick up the phone. And the phone channel should be used for like complex use cases, moments of empathy that need extra attention and
Yeah.
care, not how do I log into my portal? You don't need to answer that question on a phone call. It sounds ridiculous. But, like, could you imagine if that was Apple's approach every time somebody lost their iCloud password? Like, well, you're gonna call and wait 15 minutes to get somebody to send you a link to your email to click on the computer that you were on to begin with to get that reset. And it's just like the amount of waste and the amount of like sheer operational dollars that are spent on things because we don't know they're happening, because we don't have the insights to tell us, and because there's not a practice focus on discovering what people are looking for with their intent, and it's all right there.
Yeah. I'm just going back to the Apple thing.
Yeah, right.
No, you're 100% right. Uh, yeah, I wanna actually switch gears a little bit because I wanna
Yeah.
ask what you're talking about. How often do you fluctuate between like complete excitement about all the things that are happening in our space to like, because we're both, I don't know how old you are, but like I've been doing this for about 25 years, and
Yeah,
I
same.
okay, I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, I think I'm still having the same conversations I had 25 years ago,
Oh,
and my peers are having them, and every
yeah.
single one of us is like, what are we doing wrong? What are we doing wrong, Chris?
Well, I like to call it same story, different font. It's literally like it's just like the clothes we wear, 90s fashions back in now. It's great, but it's all the same thing. What are we doing wrong? I think is we are listening to people that aren't close to the customer to make decisions. And I think that marketing has always been put in this box, and it's so frustrating. Even though marketers have gotten so much more sophisticated in the last 5 to 10 years than they've ever been. And the craft of marketing is invest I think I saw a stat a few years ago that CMOs now invest more in technology than CIOs or CTOs.
Uh, so I want to point something out to you. Name a CMO in the hospital industry who has recently been promoted from the digital space or has been hired from the digital space. Name one. I'll wait. So here's another problem.
Yeah,
Too far away from the customer. The CMOs of today are the CMOs who were trained in PR, communications, and traditional marketing.
absolutely.
Get your digital people in the seats, people. That's who needs,
Well,
not that those CMOs are bad at their jobs. They're excellent at their
yeah.
jobs, but you need people who understand digital inside and out to do these jobs now.
Well, and I wouldn't be in the role I'm in had not it been for Frank Austin in 2014 saw that I was helping the marketing team through a digital lens and through thinking of the customer. I was in strategy and planning. I had no interest in marketing. And I came in and ultimately became like the director of marketing at the Dignity Arizona region because I just thought of things differently. It wasn't because like everybody else I was around had no shade whatsoever, but I mean they had come through PR and communications and just kept getting responsibilities stacked on top of them with not a whole lot of direction. And I think it still comes down to the fact that marketing is seen as a lesser of the entire operational
Correct.
composition of healthcare. And I think that some CEO or some board out there is going to one day take a flyer on a digital guy or girl or whoever and say, you know what,
Go for it.
this hasn't been working. You know, communications as the front end of marketing is not the way to go. You need somebody that is a dot connector, a collaborator that can work horizontally across the business and understand how it works from soup to nuts. And then hire excellent practitioners of communication, of
Well,
PR.
communication should be the front door of communications and PR. That's who should
Right,
be running
right.
those things. But and they should be have a seat at the table. I don't think it should be called marketing anymore. I think it should be
Yeah.
called customer
Customer. Yeah.
experience operations or whatever it is, because we're not, it's like you just said, well, you don't need demand gen in healthcare. So what marketing exactly are we doing? Well, we're not really marketing. We're educating, we're explaining, we're making differentiation. So there are traditional professors who would say, okay, well, you have a product, you have a price, you have a placement, you are a marketer. Yeah, but we're more than that. And I think what we're doing wrong is that we're not trusted by the people who need to trust us, and yet we're the people who see the most, like you said, cross horizontally. Okay, any other stat in your research that you think would be really interesting to people?
Yeah. So the other one, which was really relevant to what SearchStax does, was that 60% of the survey respondents reported issues with on-site search capabilities. So again, the demand of using search as a navigation tool is there clearly, and the other side of it, which is like the hypothesis I had, which is most health systems have a broken search function or a search that's dysfunctional and disorganized.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, consumers want the ability to navigate through their own words, not through a menu tree. And I think that's key because again, as we're thinking about designing the next wave of digital experiences for consumers, it needs to be done as elegantly as Spotify and Netflix do it, I think.
Yeah, I think part of the reason that takes such a long time for us to get there is that the patients come no matter what.
Right.
So that's part of it also. It's like the doctors are like, "Well, yeah, you're telling us." So it's so interesting. They'll say to us, "We want to be like Netflix. To make us like Netflix."
Yeah.
We'll say, "Okay, well, what does that mean to you?" And they tell us like, "I want to be able to make an appointment the same way I can order somebody to come fix my windshield." Okay, that's great. Will you open up your scheduling for Epic Online Scheduling? No, 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 no. No, patients can't schedule with me. They don't know what they're doing. I'm going to see the wrong
Right.
patients at the wrong time in the wrong locations. Doctors are legitimately right about that. Like a breast cancer surgeon cannot see, a patient does have to go through some sort of triage, right? So so Dr. Smith, will you open up your online scheduling with your own whatever you're doing so that they only have certain appointments available? No, only my team can schedule me. Okay, well then we can't have somebody come to your house to fix your windshield if you won't tell them where you live.
Right.
And that's where the conversations start to fall apart because the doctors get to control a lot of those decisions because operationally they are in charge. They are the reason that you can't make money at a hospital without providers. You just can't do
Yeah.
it.
They're literally the product.
That
I
so
mean,
that it right, so they're holding the executives hostage, right, they are the product, that's exactly right, and it's not through any fault of their own. I think when you sit down and you explain to them, they're very lovely and they understand where you're coming from, and then they do a really good job of educating you as to why they think this is a bad idea, and so, I think part of what all of us have to do a better job about is recognizing that downloading or being able to instantly stream a movie is very different than going to see a doctor. It just is.
yeah.
So to create these like elegant solutions, what does an elegant solution look like in healthcare? I know
Yes.
it looks
Yes.
like at Netflix, but what does it actually look like in healthcare? And that's where I feel like maybe that's what we could be doing a better job at. Not what are you and I doing wrong, but how can we come at it from the perspective of yes, there are companies who have solved these business problems in a very elegant, lovely way. That is correct. Nobody ever thought, I don't know, when you were growing up, that you would press a button and a stranger would come pick you
No.
up. You'd be like,
Crazy.
"Hey, how's it going?" So it's crazy, right? So we can get used to new ways of doing things and new ideas. The question is how do we get to a place where we're disrupting and people are still being taken care of safely and they're still feeling satisfied? And I think that's always going to be a rub. I just do.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it all comes back to this quote that the former CEO of Banner Health, Peter Fine, would say, and it was more about like leadership and people, but I see this kind of as like a universal tenet. Visibility builds credibility, credibility builds trust. So like to the point of the Uber, like we went from, I mean, I wouldn't trust it until I experienced it, right? And so like you have to see what it's going to look like. See, you see a picture of the person, you see the license plate, you see the type of car, you see ratings and reviews. All of that stuff goes into like a decision tree that then becomes credibility. And then over time, that credibility
right.
becomes trust. And then you don't think about it anymore. And I think that's what healthcare can get better at is building more visibility to the why, understanding like, you know, rather than just giving going through a booking flow and say, well, you're a new patient, you have to call. Okay, what does that mean? Like, I mean, just be a little bit more clear on
Right,
the front
exactly.
end. Yeah,
Exactly,
and align
exactly.
to expectations better. And then on the internal side, I want to touch on one thing because the doctors in the organization are the most important piece of the care continuum. But you know, the lost art of change management, I can't express this enough. You know, things are going to happen. Things are going to happen to people. Things are going to happen because of people. But like the communication strategy to get big things done all relies on a strong change management philosophy and approach. And when you can you know, guide people through a conversation to say, hey, this thing's happening. Here's how it might impact you. Let's talk about how this feels or and then you can start to foster more collaboration, which there's the visibility. And then the credibility is built because you involved people. And then the trust is earned because you had a mutual successful project.
Agree. I always say where there's a political will, there's a political way.
No doubt.
And thank you to my audience for joining me today. You can find Chris on LinkedIn. He always posts really relevant information to our industry. I hope you got the answer you needed today. If you have a burning question, drop it in the comments or email it to me at ahava.leibtag at ahamediagroup.com. I'll see you next time.